Ladies and gentlemen, get the book Dr. Joshua Bowen wrote, The Atheist Handbook to the Old Testament. It is extremely full of knowledge and information for anyone, as well as join the Patreon. There's hundreds of videos that have been not released to the internet. You can ask questions and I will record them with these scholars in high definition. I do that all the time. You can also personal message me and you help the community grow. Thanks a lot. Dr. Joshua Bowen. This is a hot topic, abortion.
Okay.
And so many Christians and mostly Christians will use the Bible to say, the Bible's pro-life. I mean, haven't you read? He numbered the hairs on the head of one of the prophets, not realizing not everyone's hairs on their head are numbered, by the way. So when you look at the context, not everybody's as special as other people, especially when you get into the slavery stuff we talk about in the Bible. But the argument is, for pro-lifers, right? They say that the fetus is not just a fetus; it's a living being in your womb, and you're killing the life of a baby. The Bible's pro-life. I'm a Christian. I have the Bible on my side. Booyah! You guys get away from Planned Parenthood. Blah blah blah. Okay. Does the Bible really condemn it? Or how can you take us through what the Bible has to say about abortion?
So a great book to read on this, there's a chapter in John Collins' recent book, What Are Biblical Values? He has a chapter on abortion. I think, 99% sure, 97.3% sure. I should look at those things before I say them, but my memory is telling me it's there. So the question is, does the Bible specifically speak to the topic of abortion? I don't know that it does. However, if we are coming to the text like many Christian apologists are and like fundamentalists do, and saying that this is the inspired, inerrant word of God in the way that it presents the text, this is like historical reality, those sorts of things, then it has strong implications for the discussion, for the topic, I think. So the two passages that I think about with this, and I'm going to have a whole, maybe not a whole chapter, but a section of a chapter dedicated to this in volume 2 of my Atheist Handbook to the Old Testament. But there are two passages that come up a lot. One primarily, and that's Numbers chapter 5. So Numbers chapter 5 is the test for the unfaithful wife. And probably everybody listening knows where I'm going and what this is about. But essentially, you have a woman who's had sex, the charge is that she's had sexual relations with a guy, and the way the text describes it is there's been ejaculation, right? I mean, that's important to this. So this is what the husband suspects. He has this feeling of jealousy. He thinks that his wife has had this sexual encounter where there's been ejaculation. And just so that everybody understands this, it wasn't, I don't think that the problem was so much that, I'm offended that my wife has been with somebody else, although that's clearly there, but it's that this is a crime against the husband if this has taken place. Laws about inheritance and ensuring that, there's purity in the line, all those types of things play in. It's a very patriarchal society, right? So what do you do? What do you do if you're a husband during this patriarchal society where you suspect your wife has committed this crime against you and yet you don't have any evidence of it? And the legal rationale, you have these sorts of tests that you can do to try to get at the truth, right? So, for example, getting into a slightly different arena, if you find somebody that's murdered, and in the book of Deuteronomy, and I think it's Deuteronomy 22, I can't remember, but you have like a person that's found dead, and they're near a city, but they're not in the city. Well, the elders of that city are supposed to come out, swear an oath that they didn't have anything to do with it, and they sacrifice like the heifer, and anyway, there's a whole ritual involved with it where they say, we're not guilty. And then they're cleared of those charges, or cleared of responsibility for it. So, but again, it's calling on the God as judge. This is the key. Like, God is the one that he sees. If there are no witnesses, still God sees. And so they're swearing an oath saying, we swear that we didn't do this, understanding that if we did, we're bringing down the wrath of the deity upon us. And we have rituals like this in the ancient Near East. So there's the river ordeal. So if you, there was a city called Hit that was on the Euphrates River, and it was sort of famous for this, the river ordeal. And if somebody had suspected of committing a crime, or there's a dispute and we don't have a witness, we don't have evidence, you could do the river ordeal, where the person gets thrown into the river, and if they drown, or if they, so the river is the god. And so the river is essentially knows all, has this omniscience in this regard, and so would judge the person if they lied, or clear them if they were telling the truth. But again, it's this ritual that's done, that's putting it in the hands of the god to judge, because we don't have evidence, we don't have human testimony, we don't have eyewitness accounts, so on and so forth. Okay, with all that as the background, Numbers chapter 5 is a scenario where we've got this woman, she's suspected of her husband of having sexual relations with somebody else. And what do? Well, you bring her to the priest at the tabernacle, and the priest has a ritual, and it's a very elaborate ritual in Numbers chapter 5. By the way, I promise I'm going somewhere with this, everybody at home listening. I know it seems like I'm going a very roundabout way getting there, but I promise I'm getting there. And the priest makes her swear, essentially she's doing the same thing, that she's swearing that she didn't have sexual relations with anyone. She didn't cheat on her husband. And the priest takes dirt from the floor of the tabernacle, mixes it with water, and then, says this ritualistic formula, and then gives it to the woman, and the woman swears before God that she did not have sexual relations, and she drinks it. Well, this concoction, God uses it, and she goes home. And the text is a little weird here, it's hard to really get at the specifics of it. But essentially, her reproductive capacity, her reproductive organs, if she has lied, God uses that potion with the dirt from the floor of the tabernacle to essentially screw up her reproductive organs and make her sterile. She can't have babies anymore. And if she is not lying, then God just lets that potion pass through her and everything's good to go. And she actually is, fertile and she can have babies. Okay, what does this have to do with the abortion question? Well, most scholars would come to this passage and say, okay, we don't think that this thing was actually done. We don't think this is an actual ritual. This is a later text. This is priestly writing, and so this is something later. It's maybe the way they thought it should have been, something they came up with, whatever. But this isn't an actual, something that was that took place. However, if you're coming at this from a more fundamentalist or even a Christian apologetics viewpoint, you might defend this text and say, no, this is actually God prescribed this. This is what's supposed to happen. And the priests, they actually did this. Well, if that's the case, and priests actually did this, and did this in response to women having sexual relations with men, well, the chances are that maybe even more frequently than not, there's a baby in the womb, right? And if this potion screws up her reproductive organs, well, this terminates the pregnancy, which is abortion. Now, is the text focused on the fetus? No, I don't think so. I think the text is focused on the reproductive capacity of the woman. But I think the fetus is sort of ancillary. It's there, but it's not the focus. So I don't think it's a text about abortion. However, if you interpret it through that lens and you carry it to that logical conclusion, well, God is he's prescribing a ritual that causes abortions, causes pregnancies to become terminated. So then you'd have to wrestle with that. How is God prescribing a ritual that brings about an abortive process. So I think it does play into the discussion here. So I'll pause before I go into the other. Does that make sense?
Yeah. That makes perfect sense.
Okay.
I think it's what keeps coming to mind, I guess, in a moral sense with using modern day idea, looking at the Bible, is there's also places, and didn't want to go there. You're going to get into another example here, I think, in just a moment about babies in the womb. But where God tells kill every man, woman, and child.
Yes.
He's so concerned about the baby in the womb. Yet one thing I think is important, and you can verify this or say yes or no on this, is the author writing this is coming from a chosen side. So like,
yes.
You're reading literature of people who already think they're the ones cared about by God, which to me indicates that these other people out there that aren't Israelites, according to their God and their prescripts, if you will, they're not, it's not as concerned. Their God is not like concerned about the Canaanites as much. Now, don't get me wrong.
Right.
There seems to be a weird thing about when Molech comes on the scene and they're burnt offering children to the god Molech. Is that because other nations are doing practices that are horrendous? Or is it that Canaanites are really us in some sense and that we were practicing their same rituals? So we need to kill off these guys because, hey, some of us are practicing what they're doing. You see, and so we need to do that. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm just saying if someone so thinks they're concerned, they're reading stuff like the prophet Jeremiah, I think it is, or Isaiah, where he knows every hair, the number of the hair on your head. No one else is detailed biblically that God actually knows the number of hairs on everyone's head, like every single person. That it seems like the chosen are special. So he knows every number on their head.
Yeah.
So I guess there's like different tiers for like how important you are when you're seeing this. And Christians have applied themselves into the context and said, we are these people.
Sure.
So anyway, what's your other example?
Yeah, I think that's important, and it sort of probably is a good segue into this second example, which again is not a text about abortion. I don't think that's the point of the text, but it has implications if you come at it with this interpretive model.
Right.
And that is Exodus 21, 22 to 23, I think, is where it's at, and it's the laws about when if two men are fighting and they hit a pregnant woman, what happens? They hit a pregnant woman and there's a miscarriage, right? And we see parallel laws in other ancient Near Eastern law collections. And while the grammar, the vocabulary is actually a little tricky there, there's this word ason in the Hebrew, that word, it's debated what it means. But the overall point stands for what we're talking about. So if two men are fighting and they accidentally hit a woman who's pregnant and she miscarries, if there is, so that's this is the main, this is the situation that's being set up in this casuistic law. Two men are fighting, hit a pregnant woman, she miscarries. Boom. Okay, what are the different circumstances? Well, if there is ason, whatever that means, then there's a certain fine. I think the fine, I haven't looked at the passage in a while, but I think the fine is whatever the husband sets as a payment. There's a payment to be made. But if there's no ason, if there's no, it seems like what the passage is getting at is that if there is no other harm done to the woman, then there's a fine. Lost the baby, right? And that's a monetary thing, has monetary value. So then there's a fine that's to be set. But if there is, it seems like if there is damage that's done to the wife, that's when it leads into, then you are to give eye for eye, tooth for tooth, burn for burn, foot for foot, whatever. So what that then leads us to ask is, wait a minute, it doesn't seem like there is lex talionis for the life of the fetus. In other words, it doesn't seem like, okay, the person's killed. So you got two men fighting, fetus comes out, there's a miscarriage, fetus dies. Well, then whoever, there's death for somebody. right? There's lex talionis.
Why isn't the death of that infant or that fetus, why doesn't that death cause the person who caused the infliction to be put to death, or cause that person to really, really pay a fine? I mean, no, it was like 5 shekels or some crap that's like...
Yeah, it seems like there is... And again, I don't think this is the point of the text.
Right.
We're discussing it because I think what it does is it shows that the value, there's a monetary value set on the fetus. Whereas if there's harm that comes to the woman, the mother, then lex talionis applies.
Right.
And you see this same sort of thing later in the passage when it comes to a slave, right? So with a slave, if the goring ox.
Yeah, I love that example.
So the goring ox, again, same passage, a little bit later on, 28 to 32, I think, verses 28 to 32. If there's an ox and he gores someone, what do you do? Like, this is the question. It's not a person killing another person, it's an animal killing another person. Well, there are a couple of factors. Is this his first time doing it, right? Is it that the ox just happened? Because this is how life works, right? If people are in close contact with these big animals, and it could just be the ox was fine and all of a sudden he gores somebody, right? Well then, certain set of lighter penalties here, right? However, if that owner of the ox knows that his ox, he's been told before, hey, your ox has this tendency to gore people, right? It's a gorer, that's what the text says. And that the owner doesn't take steps to keep the ox penned up or, away from people, and takes safety, steps to ensure the safety of the people around the ox. Well then, if it gores a man, a free woman, or one of his children,
after it's already been
established that it's a goring ox and he didn't take the precautions, then the owner's life is forfeit.
So the family members of the people who died have right to go kill him.
That's right. Now the text then says, however, if a ransom is set,
right, you can pay me for it.
Right. So let's say, just to put it in clear terms, let's say you and I have an ox, and your wife comes walking by and the ox gores her and kills her. And I've known that my ox has a tendency to do that.
I could kill you.
You now have a right to my life.
Or I could say, for your life, instead of killing you, I want 50 shekels.
And what would probably be more likely is that I would go, whoa, okay. Look, I'm really sorry. What will you take to not kill me?
Right.
And I would say, I'll offer you 100 shekels of silver. And you're like, screw that. Like, that was my wife. I really loved her. Okay, 500 shekels. And you go, 500 shekels? That's a lot of money.
Especially in that day.
Yeah, especially. Okay, all right, I'll tell you what.
I can't bring her back.
Yeah,
so.
You give me 600 shekels and I'll let you live. So that's what lex talionis, I think, is probably set to do anyway. But that's. However, let's keep it going. You have a slave.
Okay.
And my ox gores your slave to death. Well, you don't have a right to my life.
Right. There's 30 shekels.
I pay you 30 shekels and we're done. That's it. Sorry, that's Oliver. Apparently building something.
Yeah.
Oliver, hey, gotta be quiet, buddy.
Shh. Okay.
So the value of that slave is fixed.
Right.
And it's not paid to the slave's family.
It's paid to you, the owner,
because you owned him or her. And this is so this is important to understand. That slave is that is being treated under property law, not under family law. So coming back to the two men fighting, the pregnant woman gets hit, and there's a miscarriage. It seems like there's a monetary value that's being established for the fetus.
Because they're not quite viewing the fetus as a free man or free woman, or already as an established human.
That's right. It doesn't have the same value that another human has.
Right.
That is somebody that has been born and is outside of the womb.
Right.
So all of those things together, I think those two passages, again, to be 100% clear, I don't think that the text has in mind, or that the writers of the text or editors of the text had in mind, we're going to say something about abortion.
Right.
I don't think that's what's going on.
Indirectly, though.
That's right. It's something that if you take this interpretive approach, then you have to wrestle with why it is that the value is different for the fetus, or why it is that God's okay or is prescribing this ritual which will bring about an abortive process.
Because that would have been the perfect time to bring up, by the way, you hit a pregnant woman of the man you're fighting, you killed the baby, and now it's eye for an eye.
Yeah.
Your life is now, or there's a way you can pay out if they're willing to come up with a set price. But no, it doesn't seem like the obviously the injury of the woman matters, but the child is secondary, and it's so indirect on pointing out, simply by that you can deduce, it's obvious that the importance of the life that's being aborted is not on the equal playing field as the woman who gets harmed.
Yeah.
So two different levels, which means, how does the Bible view infants in the womb in comparison? Well, probably very much like we do in a weird way today. I mean, obviously totally different context, but you wouldn't look at, a lot of women are viewing this child, this fetus, as like, okay, it's not in the world yet. It has not come and been born and been birthed. It has no recollection like we do, and it won't suffer in the same manner that we may suffer. I don't know. That's getting into some details, but
I think that let's put ourselves back in their shoes. Mortality rates were incredibly high in the ancient world. So there's no guarantee that, Megan and I know very well, we lost Harry last year.
Right.
He was 37 weeks old.
Wow.
And still, died just his heart stopped. She was having contractions, he was in the process of being born.
Right.
And his heart stopped. So there, even today, with all modern medicine and all the precautions, we have no guarantee that. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
We have no guarantee that a child is going to be born.
Right.
So much less did they have that guarantee. We have ancient texts. Like the Enuma Elish, not the Enuma Elish. I'm sorry, Atrahasis, the flood story, Akkadian flood story. About the flood survivor Atrahasis. At the end, it's demons are set. There's this whole process about this demon is going to go and snatch babies from the birth stools, right? Because this is sort of explaining why it is that so many babies die.
Which is like SIDS in a way.
Yeah, that's right. Or even just in giving birth.
Okay.
And so, there is no, from a legal standpoint, let's say it's my wife and, you and somebody else are fighting and you hit my wife and the fetus that's, 30 weeks or whatever comes out. Well, there was no, the law has to say, well, there's no guarantee that that child was going to survive and become a
active member of the world.
like a useful member of that household, of that family, one that would be able to work and earn and all these things. So we can't just ascribe to that fetus full value of a human that has made it through and survived and become a full member of the household. So we have to take that into account. How do we do that, right? And that's why I think the rationale that people have, the legal rationale that these people have that are making these laws, this is the things that they're wrestling with and the realities that they're wrestling with. But again, if you're coming to the text saying, well, the moment of conception, God views that as a full human.
Yeah, see.
And valued in the same way, this is what you have to wrestle with. Why is it that God would set out laws this way and not ascribe the same sort of value ostensibly to a full human?
So just wrapping this up, to put it simply, no matter where you stand on this moral argument, on whether or not you think this is something you don't like or wouldn't be okay with, or you're okay with, the point is, stop trying to use the biblical account as your evidence to say this is proof that God is against abortion and he's anti this whole thing. I'm over here. Anti this whole, people are going to this, getting aborted all the time, if you will, this children. So they're killing lives and they're murderers and this and this and that. It's like, you're using a text, sorry, this doesn't quite work with you. Now you can go and cherry pick and pull out of context and he knows the numbers on your head. And it's like, yeah, who's he talking about? Anyway, my point is stop using the Bible for that. No matter where you morally stand today on do you think abortions are okay or not, I think women deserve to have their rights, right? I also think it would be foolish to just let, personally, women, as I've heard it said, they fully carried and now they give birth to abort a child. Like, it's like, okay, shouldn't we have certain boundaries? I'm not a lawmaker either. So this is above my pay grade in an area that I'm not as well informed on all the nuances to different things that can occur in reality. Rapist, you name it. The list can go on. But also health conditions. Like, what about a child that they know in the womb has something like that's going to cause the most horrific life on a child? Are we supposed to just, I believe in life and this child needs to suffer as long as it can live for the 8 years it has life while it's suffering, and the parents go broke having to pay for medical expenses the whole time? There's so many different examples. So quit using the Bible, I think, is the point, to try and justify your entire rationale to go demonize people standing outside of these, these centers where someone might be really, and you don't know their personal situation, and you're out here using an ancient book irrelevant of your modern context.
Yeah, and I mean, just sort of to piggyback on that a little bit, like, I think that so often what I see with people that are utilizing the Bible to argue these, I don't want to say crazy, but these extreme pro-life positions, they are very frequently interpreting the Bible as a fundamentalist would. And if you're going to do that, to stay consistent, you've got to take into account these passages. And to sort of last thing I'll say about this, I don't like wading into the abortion issue because for two reasons. Number one, I don't know enough about it to be able to speak to it. But probably more importantly is I'm not a woman. And I think that women are so often left out of this conversation, and it frustrates the hell out of me because a bunch of guys sitting around talking about what should be done with a woman's body just seems so bizarre to me. You go carry a child for 9 months. You have your body. I mean, I have 5 kids now, and I've watched what my wife has gone through. I mean, she carried Harry for 9 months and lost him. I don't think I have the right to tell a woman, you have to carry that child come hell or high water, knowing that it's going to do all these things to your body and you might lose it. Like, I think that women need to have such a much more substantial say in this discussion because it's their bodies.
Thank you.